Okay, so the second part is of the monitoring with open source electronics, Arduino, with the automatization we already discussed, but now we're going to add data transfer. More specifically, data transfer to the internet. So this is also called the IoT or the Internet of Things because you're connecting appliances directly to the internet and you're monitoring, but you can also control appliances directly from the internet. Here in this example, we'll only be sending data to the internet. We'll not be creating another function which enables to control from the internet. This is more difficult, but we're only going to send data to the internet. Now, the whole thing here is exactly the same. The only difference is this part. So this is the only difference, and what the difference is that, for instance, you have the input, which is the pH sensor. The Arduino board does some calculations, and the output is the pH value. Now this output used to be sent to the LCD, but at the same time now we're going to send the output to a data transfer module. This data transfer module will send the data to the internet, and more specifically to Thingspeak, which is a website that was discussed before. Now, this data transfer module can either be a cable, can be Bluetooth, can be Wi-Fi. These are all pretty straightforward solutions and not that difficult. But we're going to be using a cellular module, so a cell phone module, because in a marine environment usually you don't have access to these three. But for cellular phone or cellular network, you need specific language of codes. You need these specific codes that are very complicated. So,
in the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
So if you want to send our data from this Arduino setting, this whole project, to the internet, you're going to have to find some way to connect or to send your data from the Arduino directly to the internet. This can be done by a Wi-Fi, this can be done by a cable, this can be done by Bluetooth. But since we're marine scientists, usually we don't have access to these in a marine environment. So in that way, we're going to try to send our data using this cell phone module. A cell phone module is exactly the same thing as a regular cell phone. So it has a SIM card in the back. This is the power required to drive this module. This is the antenna. This is the on-off button. And here you have normally you have to connect the power to here, but since I don't have this pin, you can also just solder on the back a regular. This is just a lazy way to do it. And then, so what you do is you turn it on like this, and once it's turned on, you can press the button on the side for 2 seconds, and then you will see it will start to blink. When it starts to blink, it means that it's connected to the whole cellular network. Either way, so how it works is you connect the ground pin, so you have 8 pins on this module. The lower ground pin you connect to the blue ones, just like before, and then you have the TX and RX, which are connected to the 11 and 10 digital pin of the Arduino. So what happens is the Arduino is sending the data through these 2 pins to this SIM808 module. It will do some calculations, some transformations, and it will send the data through this antenna to the cell phone mast. And the cell phone mast is connected to the cell phone provider. So the cell phone provider will receive the data from this module. It will send it to the World Wide Web, and more specifically to Thingspeak. So if you have a pH 6.5 on your Arduino, which you will be able to see on the LCD, it will also at the same time send the pH 6.5 to this module, which will send it to the mast, which will be received by the cell phone provider, which will send it to Thingspeak. And on the website of Thingspeak, you will be able to read the same value as on the LCD. So this is the code with the GSM module. It's basically the same thing. The only difference is that here we incorporated the code that will send the data to the internet using the cell phone module. So we have some extra libraries that you can see. The beginning is basically the same thing, except we're loading here the cell phone module. This is the same. This is for the LCD. This is the calculation from the voltage of the pH sensor towards a pH value. This is just as before the code that will open or close the valve depending on the pH. The difference is that here we have a pH of 6 instead of 7. So if the pH is higher than 6, for instance 7, then the CO2 valve will open. Else, so in every other situation, the CO2 valve will be closed, so lower than 6. Starting from here, we have the whole code to send the data to the cell phone provider. So this is very difficult and very complicated code. The important thing is that you will, if you're using this code, you will need to change some things. So you will need to know which internet or which provider you have on your SIM card. In my case, this is internet.proximus.be because it's a Belgian provider. So there's nothing to do. Then you will have to start a channel on Thingspeak. You have to load here, and then you will need the key to your channel on Thingspeak, and this is the key you will need to put here. So this is your key. You will have another key, so every key is unique to a channel, and this field 1 is the data I'm sending, and the data I'm sending is of course the pH. I will do some other things, but this is way too complicated, even I don't understand it. So here we are on Thingspeak, and first you need to create an account. Then once you're on your account, you just press channel, my channels, and then you create a new channel, but this is not difficult, so we'll just move on. So I already created the CO2 pH project. You move to channel settings. On channel settings, you just write in field number 1 pH, click save channel, and then you will need the API keys. So this key here, you will need to copy this key and you will need to print it in the code. So this key in this code here, this is the same key as in my channel. So once you have the key, you paste it into your code, and then it knows where the data will be need to send to. And then once it all set up, you will start to receive, when your whole setup is working, it will start to send data towards Thingspeak. And so here it's been sending some data for a couple of hours now, and for instance at this moment the pH was 5, and at some point it was 6. And so you can monitor the pH from the internet of your whole setup. That can be kilometers or somewhere in the middle of the sea. You will be able to receive data on your laptop. Right, so part number 2. So the whole setup is exactly the same except for this part here. This is the cellular module, which is connected to the Arduino, which will send the data received by the Arduino all the way to Thingspeak. So the code has already been loaded into the Arduino. The pH is currently 9.2. Normally there should be bubbles, but I just closed the valve for 2 seconds. But we can see that on Thingspeak that the pH is roughly 9 for the moment. And I will now open the bubbler. Okay, so now CO2 is bubbling into the installation and the pH will start to drop. And so what happens is every minute or something, the cellular card or the cellular module will send the pH value towards Thingspeak, which will notice the drop in pH over time. And that's how you send data online. So thank you for watching.